Good morning, students. Today we'll be talking about global biodiversity, patterns and processes. This would be my first part of the global biodiversity series. You know that the term biodiversity was coined by Walter Rosen in 1986. So how we can define biodiversity? There are a number of different definitions regarding biodiversity. Workers have defined biodiversity in different contexts, but what United Nations Environment Program 1992 says that the variability among living organisms from all the sources, including inter alia, terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems and ecological complexes of which they are a part of. This includes diversity within species, between species, and between of ecosystems. So, global trends in biodiversity. If we talk about trends means how biodiversity is accumulated in a certain part of the world, how it is least in some part of the world. So what exactly is the trend, how it is increasing, is there any loss of biodiversity? So that all comes into trends in biodiversity. You know that accumulation of biodiversity on this earth actually reflects the differences between a rate of speciation and the rate of extinction. You know, 99% of species that ever existed on earth are estimated to be extinct, but the current species range, which people from different sources, they say that there are about 2 million to 10 to the power 12 million of species, but unfortunately only a small insignificant part, maybe just 1% of the total species which they say that existed on the earth are only databased. So there is a much work to be done regarding the finding of new species and creating a database for all kind of species present on the earth, whether terrestrial, aquatic, marine, or any other ecosystems. So now the question arises then that how the patterns of biodiversity are formulated. You know that there are several hypotheses which have been given in order to explain the pattern of biodiversity, that is richness or deficit in any particular area. Broadly, we can say there are three types of patterns which we come across in nature. That is, first is on the basis of distribution and environment. First is on the basis of distribution and environment. Second is regional biodiversity. And third is ecological biodiversity. On the basis of distribution and environment, there have been 3-4 hypotheses which have been put forward by different workers from time to time. The important ones are like first is evolutionary time hypothesis. This was given by Fisher in 1960. What does it say? It simply says that the older communities, they have higher diversity compared to newly formed or evolved ones. Why? Because more time has been available in the former for development of biota in uninterrupted fashion. So means it simply says more the older the community, it will be more having the more diversity. Second is climate stability hypothesis. Again, this was given by Cornell and Orias in 1964. It says the uniformity of climate as well as relative constancy of resources in stable community results in formation of numerous niches, allowing more spaces to occupy in the unit habitat space. So what does it again says? Means the more the climate is stable, it will harbor more diversity. Third is spatial heterogeneity hypothesis. It was put forward by Simpson in 1964. What does it say? It simply says that availability of a wider range of ecological niches in more spatially complex environment favors coexistence of more species due to greater availability of resources and the competition between species. So it's very, very important. Third is productivity hypothesis. This was put forward by Cornell and Orias, 1964. It simply says the diversity of community is determined by amount of energy flowing through web. That is, more energy in the system, more biomass, and more biomass will support more biodiversity. So these four were based on the distribution and environment. So let us again have a recapitulation. First was evolutionary time hypothesis. Second was climate stability hypothesis. Third was spatial heterogeneity hypothesis. Fourth was productivity hypothesis. And the reason could be attributed to the temperate region, that is polar areas. They have suffered a lot of glaciation in recent past, as a result of which they have had a very, very unstable environment. And third is tropical regions are comparatively more susceptible to solar energy, so they receive more light, they receive more energy, and they have more photosynthesis as compared to the plants present in the temperate areas. So all these four reasons, they say that biodiversity exists more at the tropics, and it starts decreasing as we move towards polar areas. You could say maybe because just the reasons I told you, the tropical areas, they receive more sunlight, they are more stable. Tropical areas are more stable, they receive more sunlight. Temperate regions are little unstable due to glaciations and all that factors. On the basis of ecological diversity, we have first one is latitudinal gradient. This is perhaps the most elaborate and most well-known pattern according to the diversity according latitudinal gradient. So according to this, species diversity follows a regular pattern as we move from equator to polar region. Maximum biodiversity is found at equator and it starts decreasing towards poles. So what are the reasons for this? Why biodiversity start declining as we move from equator to poles? The first reason could be tropical areas. They are more stable. They have more stable climate as compared to the temperate areas. So they succeed in supporting higher number of species. About species area relationship. You know, this was given by Alexander von Humboldt. What he says that as the area of observation increases, the animal diversity increases simultaneously, but up to only a certain level. That means up to some level it will increase and then it will become stable. So that is what species area relationship says. Mathematically it can be explained, it can be given by log S is equal to log C plus Z log A. So here log S stands for richness of species, C is the y-intercept, Z is the regression coefficient, and A is the area. So species area relationship is very important when you want to survey some area, how much area you need to cover, that you will do through quadrates. So you put some quadrates and move further till the species number becomes constant. That time you have to stop, and that particular area would be your sample area, because after that you will not find any other different kind of species. So this is what species area relationship is. On the basis of regional patterns of biodiversity, there have been 4 different hypotheses proposed. One is intermediate disturbance hypothesis. This was given by Horn in 1975. it says that the highest diversity is maintained at the intermediate level of disturbance due to mosaic of habitats, permitting pioneers and late successionals to coexist. Example, you can say flooding with mild intensity or fire with mild intensity. These two examples are perfect examples of intermediate disturbance hypothesis. Another hypothesis which was proposed by John Jen 1970 is herbivore-driven forest diversity. It says that establishment of young trees in vicinity of their parents is constrained by activity of tree-specific herbivores. It explains the presence of two types of predators. Number one is distance responsive, another is density dependent responses of predators. In distance responses, the predators kill seeds within the vicinity of their parents, and density dependent predators, they kill seeds where they are most abundant. Such predators actually prevent any one species from dominating landscape, because if the species is too common, there will be few safe places for them to escape or survive, and if they are too rare, then more predators or free areas will become available, giving it the competitive advantage. And the next is equilibrium model of resource competition. Third hypothesis was equilibrium model of resource competition. Tillman, very famous ecologist, he gave in 1988 this hypothesis. It says that if multiple species are competing for a single limiting resource, then whichever species can survive at the lowest equilibrium resource level, that would outcompete all other species. And fourth hypothesis is neighborhood recruitment limitation. This was given by Hubel 1999. It is quite recent one. It says that due to poor dispersal ability, low level abundance, or chance events, many species may be absent from a neighborhood. They automatically lose any chance of competition or survival, thereby the inferior species, they win by default. Now we come to the processes influencing biodiversity. You know, there are natural or human induced processes or factors that either directly or indirectly can cause a change in biodiversity, are referred to as drivers. So in the past, you know, major changes to world's biota appear to have been driven largely by processes out of the control of humans, means extensive to life, human life itself, were climate change, tectonic movements, and even the extraterrestrial events. But current changes in biodiversity, they are mostly influenced by intrinsic factors, mostly driven by man-made events, anthropogenic disturbances. They are mostly responsible for decline in the biodiversity. So if we talk about these factors, there is not that the sequence is absolutely right, but what I feel the foremost factor is habitat loss and fragmentation. This one reason or factor or driver is foremost important in declining of biodiversity. So, you know, fragmentation, it's very easy. You know, fragmentation is simply is caused by natural disturbances. That could be fire, that could be wind speed, that could be flooding, or by human driven land use changes, maybe vegetation, maybe agriculture, or maybe road construction. So during these, you know, habitat loss and fragmentation, the species with naturally unstable populations, species which are having naturally unstable populations, they may face intrinsic vulnerability to fragmentation. And some with low rate of population may also likely to recover from declines and suffer a greater loss or genetic diversity under the influence of fragmentation. Second important reason is invasive alien species. This is another very prominent problem these days of invasives. These may threaten native species as direct predators or competitors or vectors of disease or by modifying habitat. Invasive alien species, they are foreign species. They can make use of the resources in a better way as compared to native species, and this invasiveness leads to homogenization, which is another very important problem for biodiversity. Invasive alien species, they are very detrimental to the health of the ecosystem or biodiversity. Examples, the very common example is water hyacinth, Icornia cuspis. This have a effect on fisheries, hydroelectric production, agriculture, human health. So Icornia has adverse effect on all these. It's a classical example of invasive alien species. Another you can cite European zebra mussel. So zebra mussel, they form massive colonies and tend to clog underwater structures. So another important driver of biodiversity loss is overexploitation. Overexploitation remains a serious threat to many species and population. Most commonly exploited are those species which have marine value, marine fishes, invertebrates, animals hunted for bushmeat, or plants harvested for medicinal purpose or trade. Classical example again, Jingo biloba. It has been overexploited, and considering the menace of overexploitation, even United Nations have come up with another convention on international trade in endangered species of wild fauna and flora. It has been introduced. It's an international governmental treaty agreement aimed at ensuring that international commitment to safeguard these species. Another very important driver is climate change. Now it has been clearly established that climate change is not just a talk itself, but it has severe adverse climatic effect on biodiversity and ecosystem health. The modern climate change, it's a contributing factor in the extinction of at least one species, you can say, that is golden toad. Golden toad has been completely vanished because of climate change. There have been substantial advances these days from all over the world, that bird nesting, bud break, and migration of animals, they all are being hampered by climate change. And in the future, the trends of future extinction clearly says that about 30% of the species will be lost as a consequence of climate change. So beside these four major drivers, habitat loss and fragmentation, invasive alien species, then overexploitation, climate change, there are others also like population, pollution is important, another land use change is another factor, and excessive deforestation. It is also very important. These days you have come across in Amazon how the rainfall have been lost at a rapid pace. So all these factors or drivers, they are a real threat to the coming biodiversity.